All right, everybody, welcome back here to this album review series of Megadeth, the one and only, right? And we are kicking things back off here, late 90s now. Last time we did Hidden Treasures, the little EP with some, unreleased stuff. I think it was just one unreleased track, and then, things that appear on like some of their soundtracks and stuff. This time we're talking about a full length studio album, 1997's Cryptic Writings, which I know in 2004 they remastered and remixed this thing, and it kind of had that darker album cover, which I do like that album cover better, kind of contrasts more. But I've got the original version of it here. And we're talking about some of that kind of, we've kind of seen Megadeth kind of transition as we've gone along here into a bit more of a commercial sound as we've gone on. Well, not, throwing away their heaviness, kind of like, Metallica, very, very similar, their careers, as funny as it is, Dave, coming from Metallica, their careers, the band's discographies have paralleled each other in many, many ways. And that's one of the main ways. And that's much like a lot of bands were doing, kind of experimenting during the 90s here. And this one, they don't go too far into that just yet, as far as like really experimental stuff, which we'll do the next album, right? But there's definitely a lot more of that commercial sound going on here. And we open things up with, this is a very popular one off here, and one of the best ones off here right off the bat with Trust. Man, I love the opening on this, the cool bass groove David Ellefson is bringing to the table, which, he's showing that, hey, he ain't all about just the speed here. He can really, get a good groove going without that. And you got a sick Marty Friedman riff, man. Love it. Love the riff on this track. And, the verses, very hooky. The chorus, absolutely top-notch stuff right there. Very, very hooky. And that you're going to find that, like, the hooks on this are very, very memorable. Because they were going for that really commercial sound, and they were really trying to, like it says, hooks people, like the word says, it hooks people in. So they had to really, they really focused hard on that, and I think it worked, because Trust is an all-time Megadeth great song. It's cool lyrics, everything, and man, even when the song stops, for like a couple seconds, and then Marty skids in, just shredding along on that solo, and it's just, man, amazing stuff. One of my favorites, always has been one of my favorites off Cryptic Writings here. Then we go with another one that's another one of my favorites, Almost Honest. And I feel like this one could have been, put on that same level as Trust, as a hit, maybe. I mean, I guess, it didn't happen, but I mean, they both have those similar aspects, Trust being the bigger hit, but they both have those just super hooky choruses in them. And I really like, again, kind of the bass groove thing going on, and the vocal going on there with David just kind of plucking along, doing his thing. And then you've got even kind of a softer Dave Mustaine vocal coming in there, and until things kind of pick up and everything in the chorus. And yeah, this one's always been one of my favorites. Another top shelf Megadeth track here. So you're starting off with two bangers right away here. And I really like, too, like, kind of the drastic kind of time change where things go acoustic for a minute there, kind of in the breakdown, and there's a really, really nice melody that's going on there with Almost Honest here during that part. So, very, very good song. Then we go with one that's kind of got a little bit of a darker feel to it with Use the Man. I mean, talking about, using the needle, seeing the needle use the man, to obviously talk about some heroin stuff going on there. So kind of a darker content. Really, really cool song, though. Very cool riffs and very well thought out lyrics and everything. I mean, even though it's something such as simple as I've seen the man use the needle, I've seen the needle use the man. So, very simple lyric, in itself, but like such a powerful one, and really gets the message across. And another one that's got a really, really cool breakdown with kind of some odd, like, minor chord, like it kind of goes into like a minor chord progression during the breakdown, which is pretty interesting. And the vocals kind of get almost like a little like a distorted sound. I mean, it's not like an effect or anything, but like the way they're kind of Dave's kind of singing it over like some of these minor chords that kind of drastically hop in there. Just really cool. Really like Use the Man. And I forgot about this track here, Mastermind. One that really kind of harkens back to more of their roots with the faster, thrashier stuff. Especially during the chorus of this one, it's got kind of more of that edge to it. Really like this one throughout the verses as well. And, one that, again, I kind of forgot about that one. So, one that I'm going to definitely be jamming to, more so to kind of fall even more in love with this track. Because I really, it kind of took me back. I was like, man, I barely remember this one. And then I was like, oh, it kind of started coming back to me. And I'm like, I remember really digging this one. So, I'm kind of, it's kind of reintroducing me to it in a way, and I'm really dug Mastermind on this kind of remembering what it was all about and everything. This next one is quite the deep cut here that I mean, it's really short. It's like, 2 minutes, 50 seconds, which is not the shortest song on here. That's the final track at 2:38, but the Disintegrators always been one of my favorites off here. This one is definitely like a thrasher. I mean, it's speedy, all those essential classic Megadeth traits, and I especially love like the pre-chorus, we see retribution, and then Marty just with that chugging riff, or Dave, whoever's doing that part, right? And I love the solo on here. The Disintegrators definitely one that's slept on. I've not really heard people really love or hate it, but I've always that's always been like one of the top tier ones for me on this album. I don't know if I'd throw it quite up there as far as like with Almost Honest and Trust, but it's up there. It's up there for sure. And then we go with I'll Get Even, kind of an interesting song here, different kind of pacing to it and everything. One I definitely dig, and used to not like as much, but I did like it, and I kind of like it even more so. This most recent listen I've done with this, so very cool to kind of, your music palate's evolving and everything, and kind of revisiting these albums. And again, that's the beauty of it. I say it all the time. That's the beauty of it. When revisiting these things, you kind of grow more appreciation. Maybe you'll find out sometimes you don't like something as much as you did, but it seems like, to me, for the most case, it's usually I end up appreciating an album even more so. And same with some songs on the albums. And I'll Get Even's one of those. One that I wasn't too big of a fan of back then when I first, heard this album years ago. I definitely have grown to enjoy more. I really like the chorus in this one and everything. Very, again, to use the term, it's very hooky. Then we go with Sin, which this is another one I pretty much forgot about. And this is one that kind of has like a little bit of a bluesy kind of feel to it in a way, but like a sped up kind of blues. Like it's faster, like with the riff, but kind of just the way that riff is just kind of got like a, almost even like a southern kind of groove to it in a sense. Just the way it, if you hear it, you'll kind of hear what I'm talking about. But very cool song. And once I heard that riff pop on, I was like, I remember this one, and this is a pretty cool one, and one that I'm also kind of appreciating more for kind of being again, not one of my favorites off the album, but definitely a standout, as it kind of is a different sound going on with it. So I mean, it's it shines brightly on the album for sure. Not one of my favorites, but Sin is a cool one, that's for sure. Then we get to one that is probably my favorite period off here, right? Secret Place. Man, that track is so freaking good. That's got to be my favorite off here. It's a top level, top shelf Megadeth track. If I had to show anybody even just one song off this album, that would be the one. Love the addition of the sitar. That really is the icing on the cake, the cherry on top of that even. With that adds like a whole different kind of feel, like this mystique and a mysterious kind of feel to the track. That you'll hear that the guitar riff going on, and then you hear that sitar going on with it, and of course, just man, I love the solo on this one. That really just fits in line with that with this track, and very cool lyrics as well. And this track just definitely kind of has a mystique to it. And I think that sitar kind of almost makes it sound like, you know, ancient in a sense, or, you know, an ancient secret place, right? I mean, you know, it kind of has that feel to it, which I've always thought was really cool and a unique, a unique feel on a Megadeth track that you don't get too often. Then we go with Have Cool Will Travel, another kind of quicker, faster paced one that I've kind of a little bit of a bluesy kind of feel to it as well, but like more of a sped up blues, which is really cool. Kind of much like Sin. And I've always thought this one was pretty cool as well. Not one of my standout favorites by any means, but it's a cool one. No doubt about it. Then we go with another one that I'm pretty sure was a big hit off here was She-Wolf, and for the right reasons, because man, this one is it's hooks galore, right? With the chorus, the verse, the breakdown, everything is super memorable on this track, and I'm pretty sure this is one they often play live from this album. I know Trust is one they do as well often off here. And She-Wolf is I know a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people say that's this probably their favorite track off here. And I totally get it because it's a hell of a track. One that I've always liked, but I've only grown to appreciate more as time's gone on. You know, especially this one kind of falls into that category with like Trust and Almost Honest, with just being, again, kind of that commercially sound to it. Almost more of just like a hard rock, which, I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong, it's still Megadeth, right? It's still heavy stuff, still heavy metal record, to me at least. But there's more elements of like just solid, straight up hard rock, and She-Wolf is one of the prime examples of those, that element being on here. Then we go with Vortex, one I totally forgot about, and probably my least favorite off here. Like it's a faster paced one, a thrashier one, which obviously I'm like, hey, I love it. I've liked, you know, the Disintegrators and stuff like that off here. But this one just doesn't really capture me quite as much. I think it serves its purpose on here, almost like a filler track in a sense, just kind of connecting the dots, and, you know, kind of breaking up the pace after, you know, a more commercial sounding one like She-Wolf or whatever. But it's a cool track, has a really cool solo at the end of it, but just not one of my favorites, never has been. I forgot what the song went like and entirely, and I kind of remembered why I did forget it, because it's just not a very memorable track, but it's cool. You know, it's okay. Let me close it off with FFF, Fight for Freedom, or I think that's what he's, if trying to remember off the top of my head, but I think that's what's going on with that one, is what he's saying there in that chorus. But a cool closer. This one's also kind of faster paced, but is more memorable than a track like Vortex. It's got a solid chorus in it. Was it the perfect way to close the album? Maybe not. You know, I think maybe even She-Wolf could have closed the album, or A Secret Place would have been an amazing album closer. But I mean, it's a cool track, and not one of my favorites off here. Kind of near the bottom. Probably my second least favorite, in fact, off here, right behind Vortex. But you know, it's a solid closer. It's the shortest track on here. Like I said, 2 minutes 38 seconds, but it's a good one nonetheless. And you know, you wrap that up, and it's a hell of a record here. I know this one, I've heard some people kind of give this one some hate because that commerciality of it and those very, you know, maybe the over-reliance on some of these like catchy hooks or whatever, and not being as heavy or as thrashy as the 80s material, and or even just as heavy as just, you know, the early 90s stuff. But I think this album is a blast of a listen. It really is a standout in their discography as a different listen. You know, much like Metallica, where Load got a bunch of hate and all that, you know, I always, you know, give bands props for trying something new, even if it might not appeal to everybody. And I think this was a successful attempt. I mean, it had its hits off here with, you know, Trust and She-Wolf and all that, but it also, I just think, is a really solid album that makes for a fun listen with some incredible deep cuts, again, like what Secret Place and the Disintegrators and stuff like that. So I think it's a must listen. I'm definitely interested to hear your guys' thoughts on Cryptic Writings here, as again, it's kind of a controversial album in some regard, but not as controversial as we'll get with the next album, the final album of the 90s. We're talking about we're fast forward, what, 2 years to 1999 with Risk next time. Boy, that is a very, very, I wouldn't even say divisive album, just very hated album, right? So it'll be interesting to hop back into that one and see kind of where we're going with that and close out the 90s for Megadeth, you know, arguably their biggest and best decade, right? So definitely stay tuned for that, and I would love to hear your guys' comments again on Cryptic Writings. Do you guys a fan of kind of this commercial sound they were going for at the time? Or is it just a complete turnoff for you and you were like, not a fan of this album at all? Me, obviously, I love this album. I think it's awesome. I've always really dug it. And that just proves to remain the case after this most recent re-listen. So, anyways, guys, give this thing a like, subscribe, and again, comment down there. I would love to get some chat about this. Love talking about kind of the more divisive albums, as it's really interesting hearing your guys' opinions on those. So, anyways, thanks a ton, guys.